Thanks for watching Afternoon Live. You may not be able to teach an old dog new tricks, but our next guest says dogs can certainly teach us a lot about happiness. Here with a look at his new book, The Word of Dog, What Our Canine Companions Can Teach Us About Living a Good Life, we welcome Mark Rowlands. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Hannah. Delighted to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I know your dog, Shadow, is kind of a central character in this book. Can you tell me a little bit about him and his personality?
Yeah, Shadow is an East German working line shepherd. He's very aggressive, um, but also sort of paradoxically kind of sweet too. So I started thinking about this book when due to our daily walks that we took on the canal that runs behind the house, and he spends all this time chasing iguanas up and down the banks, exiling them over to the far bank of the canal. And then the very next morning they're back again and he has to start all over again. But he took such sort of joy in this activity that I thought, well, this is, the most meaningful part of his day.
Right.
And it's the difference when when we have to do the same thing over and over again, we generally don't like it at all. In fact, there's a well-known myth that's used to sort of explore this idea, the myth of Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to roll a rock up a hill for all eternity. When it gets to the top, it rolls back to the bottom, and he has to start all over again. So Sisyphus is generally taken to be the sort of epitome of a meaningless existence. And to the extent that our lives resemble the punishment of Sisyphus, then our lives are meaningless too. So the general idea goes. And it just struck me that Shadow had somehow solved this issue of how to find joy and meaning in doing the same thing over and over again. So I wanted to explore the differences between us and them, between we humans and dogs, to see why this could be.
Yeah, so is there anything that we can learn from or replicate as you see Shadow doing the same thing over and over again, finding so much joy in it? Is it possible for humans to access that same thing, or are we just wired so differently?
I think it's possible to some extent. As you say, we're wired very differently, and in the end, we can't become dogs again. I think when we're children, we most closely approximate dogs because it's this ability to take joy in the activity itself and not worry about whatever if there's going to be a reward for the activity or you whether you get something for the activity, but just enjoying the activity for its own sake. I think that's what dogs are very good at, and we were probably very good at once before we began this great game of growing up and becoming someone.
Yeah, what about the idea of self-examination? That's always sort of a, philosophical thing that we ponder and consider. Do dogs do that at all? Is there anything that we can connect in their behavior?
No, I think, with regard to self-examination, we're the kind of world heavyweight champions. We're far better at it than anything else on this planet. And it's a blessing for us, but it's also a curse because once you can reflect on yourself, you start thinking about yourself, about what you're doing and why you're doing it, then it's as if your life sort of splits into two. There's the life that you live, and there's the life that you think about, that you scrutinize, you judge, evaluate, you agonize over sometimes. And we have these two different lives, and we find it difficult to sort of bring them back into to one life at all. So a dog only has one life, since the powers of reflection in dogs are fairly minimal. The dog only has one life, and that's why I think he loves this life more than we love our two lives.
That's fascinating. So, what about the concept of unconditional love, right? I think anybody who's been around dogs always feels that though these animals are just so incredible, they show us so much love and affection. Can we learn something from them? Or again, is it just sort of a divide in the canine and human world?
I suspect it's a divide that we will never bridge again. Um, but it is, you're right. I mean, it is astonishing when you come home from work and your dreams have died just a little bit more, and the dog is there waiting and say, no, you are awesome. They're fantastic in that way. We're not quite as good as dogs, I suspect, in that respect.
What about dogs as natural philosophers? Tell me about that idea.
Well, um, the idea was originally put forward by Socrates, but he was only joking. It was a bad on Socrates' part. But I think there's something to it. So take the myth of Sisyphus I talked about earlier. So Sisyphus appears in philosophy as in two ways. First, it's his life is the epitome of a meaningless existence, just repetitive activity that aims only at its own repetition. But secondly, he's also taken as an allegory for human life. You know, we fight our way into work in the morning, 8 hours or so there achieving things. Our achievements are fairly modest, probably, and they'll soon be erased by time's passage. Then we fight our way home again, and maybe waiting at home for us children, maybe not, but maybe. And if there are, then they will probably grow up to do, you know, the same kinds of things as us. And so, looked at from this perspective, our lives resemble quite strongly the punishment of Sisyphus, rolling a rock to the top of the hill and seeing it roll back down again. So, the challenge of Sisyphus then is that our lives, Sisyphus's life is meaningless, and our lives are recognizably Sisyphean. Now, I think Shadow, without understanding that there was a problem there at all, solved this problem. And he solved it not through thinking, but through being the sort of creature he was. So, in that sense, dogs such as Shadow would be natural philosophers, solving philosophical problems they have no idea exist.
That's so fascinating. Hey, Mark, thank you so much for spending some time with us, and say hi to Shadow for us.
I will do. Thank you very much.
Mark's book again is The Word of Dog, and we'll have more information on our website at katu.com. We'll be right back with more Afternoon Live right after this.